Hey, you're back with the Get Out of Debt guy, the old Get Out of Debt guy, Steve Rode, and the new Get Out of Debt guy, Damon Day. Say hello, Damon.
Hello, Damon.
Before I forget, because I always do, if you're listening to this show and you need to get some debt help, you want to talk to somebody and talk through, sense check your situation, you can reach out to Damon at DamonDay.com. Excuse me, DamonDay.com. Almost over this cold, Damon.
Almost. He's been fighting it for at least a week. We were going to do this podcast last week, and I was like, you sound like crap. We are not doing it.
Yeah, I know. I've had it since Christmas, but
Well, I thought it was a different one. You had one.
Oh,
You
yeah.
got over it for a few days, and then you got another one.
Oh, yeah. I'm going through the buffet of winter illnesses.
Sounds fun.
All right. So today we're going to talk about the hard choices, the difficult choices. Now, I've been helping people with money troubles for 30 years or so. And this is a topic that is common across everybody. And when people run into this wall, they all feel like they're the only ones to experience this. And they're not. They're all just suffering in silence. And what we're talking about is when you run into a financial situation and you feel like you have no good choices. Now, here's a perfect example. Back in the day when I had 70 employees and we were helping people with debt, I had a software manager. And every week I had a meeting with him in his office, Brad. And Brad had a whiteboard and he had a list of the ongoing projects, the most important things. And one week I walked into his office and he said, I want you to rank these for me so we focus on them in the right order. And so I went up there and I wrote 1, 1, 1. He goes, no, that's not how this works. And it's the same thing when you're dealing with debt. If you run into a situation and you've got to make hard choices, you have to find a way to prioritize them in some way. Am I right?
You are correct, sir.
All right. Now, you've seen this situation many times yourself.
I have. Yeah. It's, and everybody's situation is different. But when we're talking about tough choices, I think about things like, okay, we have this debt. A lot of it comes down to a cash flow kind of a situation. And you're facing questions like, should we sell the house, right? To get money, whatever we can out of the house. Should we sell a car? Should we pull the kids out of charter school or private school? Should we file for bankruptcy? And what I find is a lot of people get paralysis of analysis, right?
Yep.
Because there's so many different things, and when you're looking at a financial situation, it involves debt and okay, there's not enough coming in and too much going out. What do we cut? Do we cut credit cards? Do we cut car payments? Do we cut house payments? There's a million different things that you can potentially cut.
Absolutely.
And it's just paralyzing oftentimes. Because you don't know what to do. And then you start, we don't want to sell the house. The kids grew up here. We're in the neighborhood we like. We can't sell the cars. We're going to be upside down on the cars. We can't get out of that. We don't want to go bankrupt. We don't want our credit to be ruined for, 10 years or 50 years or whatever the, prevailing thought is these days. That's usually wrong.
Yeah.
And it's just so many hard choices. And it's kind of like, you're just kind of getting by day to day, knowing you need to make some choices and some decisions, but not even really having a clue where to start analyzing what's the best thing to do.
Let me give you
that's where people get frozen.
A perfect example. I had a client once who ran into trouble, and of course he was ashamed, embarrassed, and all that stuff that he was personally feeling. But he goes, I can't afford to keep the horse for my daughter anymore. She's taking private lessons and we're boarding the horse, and I can't afford to send her to private school anymore. And I gently pushed and tried to help him prioritize, and he never could make the decision. He couldn't do it. and I couldn't do it for him. So take a guess what ended up happening.
Well, they ended up losing the horse anyway. Probably.
They lost the horse, they lost the school, they lost the house.
Yeah.
Got a money question keeping you up at night? Well, don't just Google it. Get real answers from real people who actually know what they're talking about. Head to getoutofdebt.org/podcast to ask your question, and you might hear it on an upcoming episode. But hey, if you'd rather keep it private, Damon Day has your back. Visit DAMONDAY.com because getting out of debt is easier with the right help. That's getoutofdebt.org/podcast, where smart money questions lead to smarter money moves. So, it's tough, man. If you run into a situation like this and you feel like you have no choice at all, that's why you should talk to somebody like Damon. You can always reach me through a comment on the podcast, but Damon is the guy to talk to because debt problems are not about the debt. It's just math wrapped in emotion. And
oftentimes it's oftentimes not an income problem. Sometimes it is, but a lot of times it's not. It's, the client might have plenty of money to deal with the debt. It's just we have to make some harder choices around it on how to free up some money and, like you said, prioritize. And it's really hard to prioritize without a plan. That's the first thing. You got to sit down, you got to have a plan and figure out, okay, here's what's going on. How are we going to deal with this? Because making a decision to sell a house or to tell your daughter and that we can't do the private horse riding lessons anymore, we have to sell your horse. That's not an easy decision to make.
No.
So you have to know, okay, if I take this action, if I make this decision, where am I going to end up? Is it going to be worth it? Is the trade-off going to be there, for me? Is it going to actually get us out of this problem? And what a lot of people kind of don't think about until it's too late is not making a decision is also making a decision.
Yeah, that's true.
So, things are going to happen regardless, whether you make the decision or not. It's really just a matter of whether you're wanting to go on offense or go on defense. I mean, I've got a client story. It's not as, tug at the heartstrings as the horse situation, but just simple stuff. I had a client one time and he had a nice car. He made a good income. Mm-hmm. He was on retirement income, but then he was also still working for a company making a great salary. The retirement was from a previous career. So he had plenty of money coming in. So it took a lot of things off the table like you would traditionally look at if you're just way over leveraged. What's the new word of the year, Steve? Deleveraging?
Strategic deleveraging.
Strategic deleveraging, which is basically filing for bankruptcy.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
It sounds nicer. And so we were going through his finances and I'm looking and, he had a lot of things going on. He was having to take care of his wife. They're an elderly couple and she needed a lot of in-home care and that was expensive and things like that. But we're looking at everything and he's got way too much going out than he has coming in, even though he has plenty coming in. And one of the things we looked at was he had this really nice car. Really nice car. I'm talking, it was like $1,500 a month, nice car. And I asked him about it and it's a great car. It's all the same. He's really focused on the safety features. It's so safe. It's this. And it's got all the latest safety, on it. And that's why he loved it. And I said, well, how often do you drive this car? He drove it to and from work every day, 7 miles. We'll go 7 miles from his house. So he was basically driving this that 15 miles a day.
Yeah.
It was great. It had all the safety features. And I said, what? I said, there's a lot of cars that have a lot of safety features, that aren't 1,400. And he goes, well, I don't know what to do because I can't afford, I know you're right. I can't afford the $1,400, but I'm also upside down on the car. So I can't just sell it or I can't just, and more we looked at it, more we analyzed it. And this was just part of an overall strategy. This was just one piece of it. But I said, look, you can give the car back. You can just take the hit. You're going to take the hit one way or the other. If you're upside down on a car, whether you sell it or you keep it, you're still paying that money. And so right now you don't have that money. And so his credit was still good at the time. I said, so what you can do is go out and you buy a, $400 a month Toyota or something like that, $500 a month Toyota. And this was like 10 years ago, maybe 8. You could still get a car in that payment range.
Yeah.
And he did. And it was a brand new car and he loved the new car. He loved it. It was a nice little Toyota. I don't know if it was a Corolla or what it was. I don't know what it was, but it was a new car, had the airbag, all the safety stuff that he liked. And he went and then turned in I don't remember if it was a BMW or Mercedes or something like that.
I think it was a Mercedes.
He turned it in. Now,
I remember
granted,
the story. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, granted, he got a deficiency balance, right? And we knew that going into it, but as part of the plan, because he had to get out of this, he did not have the cash flow. He was making choices between, do I pay my Mercedes payment or do I pay for the home care for my wife?
Right.
I mean, these were the kind of choices. So you got to prioritize, right? And so he did that. And then he ended up, getting the deficiency balance was like $30,000 or $40,000 or something like that. But we knew that it was coming. That was part of the strategy. It is what it is. You got to play the hand that you're dealt. But now he had that $400 car that had all the safety features. He could still get to and from work. And then we ended up resolving the deficiency balance later when the situation changed because we knew he was going to be retiring soon.
Mm-hmm.
And when he eventually retired, he was then eligible to file a Chapter 7. Now, this was about a 2-year period that transpired between the time he turned in his car and the time he eventually filed for bankruptcy.
The new car was all maxed out, so it was protected.
Yeah, but this is why that plan and that strategy and that understanding comes into play, because most people aren't going to go, okay, yeah, I could turn in this car and then I can drag out and avoid repayment on the deficiency balance for 2 years and then file. Like you have to kind of know what the end game is going to be to make it easier to make that decision. Otherwise, you're just like, oh my gosh, if I drop this car off, I'm going to get this huge bill, and then they're going to sue me, and then they're going to garnish my wages. They're going to do all this stuff. And you just kind of freak yourself out. And then out of fear, you keep paying that $1,400 a month that you can't afford. And then eventually, like with Steve's horse situation, you lose the horse, you lose the house, you lose the, whatever else they lost.
The private school.
The private school, right? You gotta have a plan, understand what the end game is, and then it makes it easier to make those tough decisions because you go, okay, this decision is really hard, but I know if I make this choice right now, then here's the light at the end of the tunnel, and this decision will help me get to that.
Well, let's get back to my definition of debt, right? It's just math wrapped in emotion, and the emotion is the part that drags everyone down. They're lost, alone, afraid, embarrassed, ashamed, or whatever they're internally feeling. But that has nothing to do with the debt. If you are afraid of what other people are going to think about you, you're not making strategic decisions. Now, as Damon has said, one of those decisions might be to, okay, on this debt, we're going to strategically default on this, and we're going to deal with it at step 4, whatever that is. And instead of doing that, people get into that thing. What are my creditors going to think about me? What is my coworker going to think about me? And ultimately, like I said, it's just math wrapped in emotion. And I don't want to be callous. I'm probably the more touchy-feely of the two of us. But when it comes to this particular situation,
you are much more touchy-feely.
Yeah. When it comes to this particular situation, I don't give a shit. I need to get you through this situation to the other side instead of having you crawl and drag and limp and everything else for the next 5 years and never get the damn thing resolved.
Yeah. And here's a very common situation. And it always starts with a cash flow situation. Not enough coming in, too much going out.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody wants to make a tough choice, or they don't know what tough choices to make. They just know they're upside down, right? Mm-hmm. So they want to try to pay everybody for various reasons, pay the car, pay the house, pay the credit cards, pay everything. And so they have some kind of savings, let's say, whether it's a retirement account, savings account, whether it's a home equity loan, or they go out and they go, okay, we got to solve the cash flow problem. We're short on cash. Okay, let's get a consolidation loan or whatever. Let's get a personal loan. Let's take a home equity out of the house. Let's start pulling from our savings. Let's take a loan from our 401ks at work. And so they're just looking at the short term. How do we get money? How do we get money? Because the bills are coming due in the next 2 weeks. We got to get money. And then what happens is they exhaust whatever resources they had trying to fix the cash flow. And all that's doing is kicking the can down the road, making the can bigger, if you want to say with that analogy. And then they eventually get to a point where that 401k is tapped out. that HELOC is tapped out. Their credit is at a point they can't get another personal loan. And now they go, oh crap. Now they're just trying to solve that problem without having, stepping out of the woods and getting the bigger picture and making some tough choices now. They wanted to avoid the tough choice of not making the credit card payment, or maybe looking at bankruptcy, or maybe trading in that car while their credit was still good and they can get a less expensive
and they just
car.
Screw themselves in the future. I've always kind of joked that, when people make bad choices like that, I'm panicking right now. I need to do something right now. I've always said, you need to write a letter to yourself about what your favorite cat food you're going to eat when you're 75, because you're going to be broke.
Yeah. Yeah. And then once they exhaust all those resources, because those were the easy things, pull money from the house and pull money from savings.
Yeah.
Once they exhaust all that and they get into real panic mode, like, oh my gosh, the credit card bill is now coming due and we've already burned through $50,000 of our savings, which is all of it.
Yeah.
In the last year and a half, trying to, make it work, or hope I'm going to get a better job, or hope this business is going to start generating more revenue. Now that didn't happen. And now we're in real panic mode. That's unfortunately when I usually get the phone call.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I found you online, or I heard your podcast or whatever. Now, I can still absolutely help you at that point, but you would have so many more options if you called me a year and a half before, when you recognize that, okay, wait, we got a situation here. We got, not enough income and too much outgo. Maybe we need to come up with a plan. The easy answer is pull from the savings and just kind of shore it up, and we'll figure it out. But that's how you get in trouble. Whenever you're in a situation where you're having to pull from savings, or pull money, equity out of the house,
you're selling your future.
Yeah, we have a problem. We need to address it sooner rather than later, because you can call me in 18 months when everything is depleted, and now it's like, hey, this house payment or this credit card or this car payment is due in 2 weeks, and I literally do not have the money. I just physically don't have it. There's no place for me to get it. What do I do? Yeah, there's still strategies. There's still things that we can do.
Yeah.
But had we addressed that and come up with a plan a year and a half before it got to that point, there would be several other options you would still have. And more importantly, more time to really absorb that information and make that decision, rather than, hey, I don't want to miss a credit card payment, but it's due next week and I don't know what to do. Well, chances are you're going to be missing that credit card payment.
Yeah. But that is the importance of having you available to them, because it's like, really smart business people have a guy, right? They got a guy they can turn to. I got a guy, who understands what the situation is, and can guide you through it. Now, here's a wake-up call for everybody. Of people who are 75 years or older, one half of those people, their net worth is less than $335,000. That includes equity in the home, retirement accounts, anything like that. That's not going to last very long at all if you have any sort of health problem or need care. So, don't sacrifice money today that you are going to need tomorrow. Now, I can give you every reason why mentally and emotionally people make that decision. It's horrible math. It makes no sense. But people are more afraid of what is in front of them today than 20 years from now. If you had a way to make it equivalent, to say to somebody on the phone today, Damon, okay, here's how you feel today. You're all panicked about your debt. Okay, but I'm going to give you this magic beanstalk letter or whatever. Well, I'm going to wave a wand, and I want you to feel what it's going to feel like in 20 years when you're retired, older, and broke. And which do you think is going to feel worse?
Yeah. But, and we can say it till we're blue in the face, but it's study after study after study has shown, and I can't, off the top of my head, I know you'll know this term, but I can't think of the term for it, where people as humans put more emphasis on today than they do on tomorrow. I know there's a term for that.
Hyperbolic discounting.
There you go. I knew Steve would have it in his. I mean, he may be the old get out of debt guy, but sometimes he still retains it. Hyperbolic discounting, which is why the savings rate is, well, I'll just talk about this country, is so low because of that fact of human nature, that what we're doing today is affecting us more and guides our decisions more than what's going to happen in the future. Even though we're all smart, we all can think, right? We all know what we should be doing,
right?
So that we aren't figuring out what kind of cat food we like. When we're
70. That's why it scares the hell out of me when we talk about privatizing Social Security and making people responsible for their own retirement savings. That is a bad idea.
Yeah, because as of right now, at least there's Social Security for some people, which everybody argues is not enough, and they're absolutely right. It's not enough, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah. I wonder what the average Social Security payment is. It's got to be like less than $2,000 a month.
I'm sure it's less than that. And obviously it depends on, how long you worked and how much you contributed, not how much you contributed, but how long you were like in the system and what age you took the first distribution and all that. But I don't even think the average would be 2,000. I mean, I could be wrong.
It is 1976.
Well, it's actually gone up more than I thought. I mean, I've had plenty of clients that were, now granted, I'm thinking back years now, and these could be people that started taking Social Security 30 years ago, when I was talking to them 10 years ago. But I've had several clients where it's like, well, my Social Security is $875, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's still because you're talking about the average. So, yes. And that's the average for an individual or household average?
That is it doesn't say.
Oh.
Let's see what.
But even at $2,000, can you imagine trying to live on $2,000 a month in the United States?
You can't do that.
You'd have to be an expat. You'd have to go to, I don't know what the chic place is these days, Costa Rica or Belize or some. You'd have to go to one of those places where you could like get an apartment for $200 a month, and $500 a month would allow you to eat like a king. You'd have to do something like that to, if you're not going to move in with family or keep working.
I do struggle with that. Having lived overseas in various countries, when I think about people leaving the United States to go to Costa Rica to retire, I mean, essentially you're giving up your family and whatever friends that you have. And
it sucks. Yeah.
Yeah. And you have no control over what's going to happen in that country. I understand it's a decision made today, but it's not a long-term solution.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're looking at going, okay, I'm retired, I'm single, I've got, I can't get a job, or I can't get a job that, pays much because of my, health or my situation or whatever, and you're living in a place, you're making $2,000 a month.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't spend, more than $1,000 a month on just, a room or something.
Right.
I mean, that's got to be less than that. And I mean, yeah, you have to give up certain things leaving the country, but I can certainly see the allure if you're in that situation.
Yeah.
Where you're like, okay, well, I'm going to probably be alive for the next 20 years. Now, and then some people might not have family. I mean, if you have family, that's a tough choice because you want to spend the next your last potential 20 years of your life around your kids and your grandkids, and living life and enjoying the grandkids growing up and things like that. Or do you want to go to a foreign country where you know nobody, but you can afford a house or, an apartment or whatever, afford, all of your meals, afford your health care and all that sort of stuff. That's a really hard choice.
Yeah. And that's why 20 years from now starts with today. We need to make some difficult decisions today to deal with the financial problem. Here's the thing about money troubles and financial problems is, in the grand scheme of things, in your entire life, in everything that whatever you're living through right now, it's diddly squat. I mean, it only matters to you. It doesn't matter to the collector. It doesn't matter to the creditor. It doesn't matter to anybody else because nobody is thinking about you. They're all thinking about themselves.
Oh, we lost our house in 2008 when the market crashed.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time I just thought, oh man, what a failure. We had, my firstborn was born in 2006. And then, so we already started falling behind on the mortgage when my second son was born in 2009. So I guess it was 2009 that we gave the house back, because he was born in that house, well, at the hospital, and then, came home to that house. But I remember being, devastated about it at the time, but it was just, I'm not going to get into all the circumstances, but we were at a spot in a house in California, and it was a custom home that we had designed and we built. Beautiful 5,000 square foot, single story home on an acre. It was a nice house. We planned on being there a long time. And then circumstances as they were, it got to the point where we went from that house was worth $850,000 to that house was worth $320,000.
Yeah.
And as emotional as it was, and it took me a while to come to that conclusion, but we were drowning in that house. And then we're like, well, we're being emotional about it because we had this house built and, our kids and all this stuff. But the financial side of it is also like, okay, we're drowning under this and things are just horrible in the economy right now. That was when everything just tanked. And we got to get a reset. We need a reset. That's not what my plan was, but we need a reset. And why am I sitting here trying to hold on to this house, even though emotionally we want to hold on to this house? But what's my big prize? I'm upside down $500,000.
Right.
So we ended up making a tough decision, right? Where we just decided to turn the house back over to the bank. I didn't want to do it. It was a tough decision, especially when, the emotions are involved with the, young family at the time. But it was financially the right thing to do. And as hard as it was at the time, now that was 15, 16 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
I never even think about it anymore.
Yeah.
It's it's fine. I mean, and I love where I'm at right now in my life. We live in a different state now, live in a really nice house. Our life is good. I like it. But back then, in that moment, I was like, oh man, this sucks. I mean, horrible. I'm a failure and this, that, and the other thing. But like you said, in the grand scheme of things, that incident is not going to be something when I'm old where I'm sitting there dwelling on that. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. It happened. It is what it is. And we made the right decision and we came out better for it.
Well, these days I'm more focused on helping people to find happiness, because it's a waste of a life to walk around feeling depressed and down and like you have no hope or future or anything all the time. And what I really want people to do is find a way to honestly tackle their situation that's best for them, and to make whatever decisions they need to go forward. Because in that example I gave you before, the pony, riding lessons, the private school, the thing that was most important for them was, family and happiness and togetherness. None of that other stuff mattered.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Damon, you got something else to add?
Well, and I know we gave a couple of examples, but if you're listening to this and you're going through some stuff, everybody has different circumstances, right? So there's not ever one right answer. You got to do it this way, you got to do it that way. I know sometimes it seems like that when you're calling these debt relief companies, or you're listening to the financial radio shows or whatever. It's like they all have their method and their way, but there's never just one way.
No, it's a negotiated solution.
Yeah. And so the big takeaway is if you're in a spot and you see the writing on the wall, you see you're going the wrong direction, the best thing you can do is take a step back and come up with a strategy and a plan. Figure out where it is you see yourself in the next few years and what you want to do. And then we can see how that should be done financially, and making those hard decisions about whether or not to sell a house or sell a car or, go bankrupt or whatever. I'm never going to say they're easy, but they are easier if you know what the outcome will be ahead of time. And for a lot of consumers, that's the missing piece. They don't really understand, if I make this decision, what that's going to do, because that's not your world. That's not what you do. So whether or not you want to talk to me or not, that's up to you. But you find somebody that has experience with this stuff that you can say, hey, if I do this, how's that going to look?
Yeah.
How's that going to play out in the short term? How's that going to play out in the long term? Well, and then you can use that information to make the decision that's right for you. But remember, not making decisions because they're not fun or they're hard is also making a decision. And oftentimes the end result is the worst possible outcome.
I mean, would you rather lose the pony or the house? So
or both.
Yeah, or both. But I can say this for you as well as me, is I have never had any emotional attachment to any decision any client has wanted to make. If you want to keep X, cool. Now let's figure out what we need to do for you to keep X. And other things have to be on the table. You have to identify what is your number one priority. Don't do a Steve and go to Brad's office and mark everything 1. We need to figure out what is your number one priority and what are we going to do to get there. I have 2 final examples, Damon. Had a client once, he had just come to me, and I think we just had his budget or information or something like that. He was so ashamed about his financial situation that he went to Vegas and tried to gamble to win, right? And pay off his debt, and he lost.
Did you just fall down the stairs? What was that noise?
No, that was the mail getting delivered through the bus.
It sounded like you just fell down the stairs. Sorry.
So he went to Vegas.
I'm there. Vegas.
He went to Vegas. He gambled. He lost. He was so ashamed about his situation. He went home and shot his daughter and wife and killed himself because he was ashamed of his situation. I know.
Well, thanks for sharing that Debbie Downer of a story.
Well, I'm just saying, don't let things get so out of hand that you're feeling like that. If you call Damon and you talk to him and you say to him, I mean, I've had people fall to my arms crying many times. But if you say to Damon, is this the worst situation you've ever seen? I can't live with myself. You know what he's going to tell you? No, it's not the worst situation. And B, we're going to get you through this. So,
you know what I usually say? I have a lot of clients that would love to have your problems.
Yeah, I know.
I was like, I got several I can call right now that would trade places with you.
God, I had a guy once had $3,000 in credit card debt, and he couldn't live with himself, and he was crying, and he's one of the guys that fell into my arms and needed a hug. And my very next client I had $1.4 million in credit card debt. He didn't care.
Well, he was going to strategically deleverage.
Yeah. Well, actually he did, because he ended up having a heart attack.
Well, I think that would be non-strategically deleveraging.
Yeah.
That's a little bit different path, not recommended.
No. All right. There is hope. There is help. And Damon is your guy. Damon, thank you very much. See ya.
Peace.
All right. Well, that was good.
Yeah.
I hope people listen.
Yeah, I think, New Year's resolutions, all that stuff. I mean, dude, I know how hard these choices are to make. I mean, nobody wants, especially if you're trying to.
Me too.
Talk about moving, and you got to go to your family and your kids. And like, hey, well, Dad, we love this house, and this is where we grew up. This is where we go to school, and that's not always the answer, but sometimes it is.
I was 32 years old, went bankrupt, had to move back in with my parents with a 3-year-old and do temp jobs. It sucked.
Yeah.
But the sun will come up tomorrow. It will get better.
But also too, sometimes selling the house is not a good choice. It's not the right answer.
Right.
There's other things that we can, what do they say? It's like, when the, what is it? The boat is sinking, or the airplane's going down, and they're like, just throw out everything that you can. We need to cut weight. We're going to crash or whatever. Sometimes there's other things that you can throw out. You don't necessarily need to throw out the house. And remember that, time this was a few years ago, I was listening to that Dave Ramsey show, and this poor guy called in, and he was just devastated about it. He had like 7 adopted kids, and they finally had a house that was big enough for all of them. And it wasn't like he's overextended on the house or anything like that, but he just had too much credit card debt. And Dave Ramsey's big thing was basically to berate him.
Yeah.
And say, you got to be a man and you got to step up and tell your family you can't live there. You can't afford that, And you got to sell the house and you got to move out and get, lower your mortgage or get into a rental. And then you got to spend the next 4 or 5 years just, baby stepping your way out of the credit card.
Horrible advice. Horrible.
And I was like, wait. It was like, no. That's not a situation where you have to sell the house just because you have too much credit card debt.
No.
So, but in Dave Ramsey's world on that radio show, that was his only option. You have to sell it. And the guy was just devastated. And I wish there was a way I could get the guy's number and say, actually, there's some other things we can look at. You may want to sell your house. That's option 1, but it's not every option. But, hey, Dave Ramsey's got his own platform and people want to call in and he can say whatever the hell he wants, And
that's like Consumer Credit Counseling had an announcement for their client of the year, the person they were most proud of helping. And it was a woman like in her late 60s, mid 70s, whose husband had Alzheimer's. And what they were celebrating was the fact that they sent her back to work to pay those bills. And her husband faded away. How is that a win?
Yeah, why she was gone at work.
Right.
Yeah, don't file bankruptcy. Just, ditch your husband and go back to work. But you can't blame her. Those were the options that she was presented with when she consulted with, I'm doing my air quotes, the experts.
They're trying to sell their widget.
Yeah, but they're the experts, according to whatever. And that was their solution. So she's like, well, I'm not an expert in this. If they're saying I have to go back to work, I really don't want to. But the expert's saying that I need to do it. And I want to solve this problem and I want to get out of this debt. But they're only presenting her with, you must go back to work.
Right.
And that's the problem with everything.
All right. Well, that's the show after the show.
Well, that'll work.
All right, man. See you next time.
See ya.
Got a money question keeping you up at night? Well, don't just Google it. Get real answers from real people who actually know what they're talking about. Head to getoutofdebt.org/podcast to ask your question, and you might hear it on an upcoming episode. But hey, if you'd rather keep it private, Damon Day has your back. Visit DAMONDAY.com because getting out of debt is easier with the right help. That's getoutofdebt.org/podcast, where smart money questions lead to smarter money moves.